you are half Ukrainian, half Russian. And when you came out as so strongly in favor of Western support of Ukraine to repel the Russian invasion, it was a surprise to some people because there was this strange correlation between people who have been taking a dissident view on other topics and the Ukraine issue. And it was interesting to observe. You sort of went against parts of your audience there. But I guess for you, it's just very visceral. Where are you now on this issue?
I mean, it is for me visceral, but that's not why I came out against it. I came out or in support, whatever position you want to think of it as. I try to say what I think is true about any individual issue. I am not someone who wants to. I don't have the oppositional defiance disorder that some people have. So if the truth, see, this is the problem that I was trying to talk about earlier. There are a lot of people who are now in a position where the way that they determine what's true is they go, what is the mainstream media saying? It must be the opposite of that. And so if the mainstream media said gravity is real, they'd jump out of a window. I don't want to jump out of a window. So on Ukraine, it happens to be a topic I know more about it than many people. And so I know what's going on the ground. So it was quite natural that I would say what I think. And my audience is people who are interested in what I have to say, not people who have a certain set of views.
Let me ask like a couple of specific questions.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have a sense, because this is the one I don't get such a great answer from the establishment voices on. Do you have a sense of what the ending looks like? Because my feeling is that after Iraq, after Afghanistan, after so many disasters, it behoves any government who is committing major military resources to have a bit of an answer to that question. What is the happy ending we are pushing for in this campaign?
I don't think there are happy endings in wars. That's what's bad about them. But come back to your previous point before, just I wanted to say as well. I think you're right that this moral indignation that sort of is thrown at people when they disagree with the position, I don't think that's necessarily healthy. That does not mean that it is not true, right? Just because people are pissed off about you saying something doesn't mean that thing is right. Right. So I think we have to make that distinction. But in terms of the ending, nobody knows because there are too many variables that are undetermined. The amount of Western support, Russia's determination to win, whether Ukrainians continue to punch above their weight, all these things are undetermined. So there is no happy ending. And by the way, there's never going to be a happy ending. This war is very bad for Russia and very bad for Ukraine.
Yeah, so happy ending is the bad phrase, obviously, but a strategy.
Right.
On the West part. I think it's fair to say, what is the strategy? What are we aiming towards? Because most recently this week, Germany had big hesitations about sending their tanks. There are 2,000 of these so-called Leopard tanks that are German-made, that they had control over, and they've now caved to what was essentially a kind of intimidation campaign by all of the other countries. They said, this is morally outrageous. How can you not be sending these tanks? And now, of course, they've caved. And you've got to think, what is the next phase? Will there now be a fighter jet? Is that going to be next month's campaign? Should we all be sending fighter jets? Typhoons? What does too much look like? Do you have a sense of that? Would there come a point when you'd be like, you know what? I feel passionately that I am Ukrainian. I feel like this invasion must be repelled. But now, this is irresponsible. We should not be committing this much.
Well, first of all, sorry to make it personal, but it's not that I am Ukrainian. I'm also Russian. I care very deeply about both countries and people in both countries. The reason that I argue for Western support for Ukraine is a pro-Western position. Do you know who are the biggest contributor countries in terms of percentage of GDP to Ukrainians' defense effort? Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Norway, Sweden, Finland, maybe not Norway, Finland, and Poland. Do you know what these countries have in common? A border with Russia. What do you think they know that people on the internet, on Twitter don't? Right? They know that every time Russia consolidates power, every time Russia has a strong leader, what do? They look outwards. And they go, we must rebuild. People think Putin's rebuilding the Soviet Union. No, he's not. He's rebuilding the Russian Empire. He hates Lenin precisely because Lenin gave away parts of the Russian Empire in order to take power and create the Soviet Union, right? This is what happens every time in history. That's why every country in the region is going, That's what's happening. And so the reason that I advocate for Western support for Ukraine is you cannot let people who do this get the sense they can get away with it. It's really as simple as that.
You don't share my anxiety then about the kind of pile-on of enthusiasm from the West into this, with sending, there is no such thing as too much, just more is more. And very few people in the establishment, to me, seem anxious about what it might lead to. And obviously nuclear escalation is one thing. And if you talk about that, you're kind of dismissed as a kook, whilst for many decades,
I don't think you are.
That was considered the main thing to worry about. They have 5,000 plus nuclear warheads pointing at us. If you put the president of Russia in a corner and aim for total victory, total annihilation, evict them from Crimea and all the rest of it, it seems plausible to me that you make that more likely.
Well, I've certainly never made the argument that Ukraine should retake Crimea, which makes me very unpopular with some pro-Ukrainian people. But I said on Question Time, literally a few days after the invasion happened, that I think the likely outcome is, you know, Russia keeps Crimea, keeps parts of the eastern regions that it's managed to conquer. The truth is, before the war, I mean, this is again makes me very unpopular with pro-Ukraine people, but no one gives a shit about those two eastern regions in Ukraine. They weren't under Ukrainian control for years now. It's a mess. You know, it's not really that important to Ukraine. And so the best outcome here, from my perspective, is Russia gets to keep the land it's conquered so far.
Beyond the Donbass, including...
No, not beyond the Donbass.
Kherson and...
well, Kherson, Ukrainians have retaken, so there's no problem there.
Kharkiv, there are various...
Kharkiv, Ukrainians have retaken as well.
Which is one just the other side of the river.
Zaporozhye is what you're talking about. Yeah, they'll retake that soon anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. But they keep the eastern regions, they keep Crimea, that's fine. For me, not for Ukrainians, as it turns out, but... and in exchange, Ukraine gets not some words on a piece of paper, not a promise, not blah, 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 actual physical security. And that means either membership of NATO or some kind of peacekeeping force on that border or some kind of Korean type of scenario. That's probably how it will...
Guaranteed by the Americans ultimately then.
Well, who else is going to guarantee anything in this world?